I just needed to understand the systems of social interaction. Now, is there an art to it? Yes, but that's where the heart-centered work comes in, connecting with people and having genuine relationships with people. All it means is that I can't have inauthentic relationships, but when the relationships are authentic, I'm good to go now. Whereas before, I couldn't really do that at all.
Welcome to another session of Rock Your Money, Rock Your Life. My name is Rock Thomas and I am a whole life millionaire mentor. And today I've got a very, very special guest, Daniel Mangena. And after receiving a late diagnosis of Aspergers and experiencing what can only be described as a life-shattering trauma at the age of 20, Daniel spent the next 7 years struggling to keep these revelations and events from spilling over into all parts of his life. As a result, his struggles built him this 4-step system called Beyond Intention Paradigm. We're going to learn a bit about that today. And initially built as a lifelong grappling with suicide thoughts, which I guess with COVID and everything, there's a lot of people that are probably going through that. And Beyond Intention was born, transforming Daniel's life from misery to celebration. Through his own struggles, Daniel found a path to lasting joy and purpose. And he wants nothing more than to share the tools that saved his life with other people. To that end, he lives by the mission statement to spearhead an evolutionary uplift in universal consciousness by awakening people to the importance of their unique role. That is already encoded in them by the way of a deep and often ignored or undervalued passion defined as their dream. Through his motivational speeches, Daniel shares his vision of empowerment and joy. The books he's authored, his Do It With Dan, that sounds cool, podcast series, which is available on all major platforms, regular blogs, published articles, and worldwide workshops have all helped thousands of people across the globe. His prolific work recently has earned him a spot in the Wall Street Journal as the master of success and a scene on Wall Street Journal, Market Watch, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Daniel to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rock.
There he is, coming live from Cabo.
Yes, sir.
So take us a little bit through the journey of, you had suicidal thoughts, you've worked through that, you had some labels put on you. Tell us a little bit what that was like growing up that way.
You know, the interesting thing is that I didn't grow up that way. That all kind of got thrust on me whilst I was already a grown-up. I didn't get my Aspergers diagnosis until I was 27. So I spent my entire life not knowing that I was on the autistic spectrum, facing challenges that arose from that and not knowing where they came from. And one of the things that I now look back on as a result of that is how many people are running around with underlying things, let's say, going on that are impacting their ability to show up and rock their life. And they're just one solution away, one piece of information away, one question away, one step away from being on the other side of that. Because I'll tell you, people are like, oh my God, what was it like to be diagnosed with Asperger's? Well, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because finally I understood why I had this crippling anxieties, crippling social and I had really bad insomnia. I'm not talking about, a few nights of no sleep. I'm talking about a week sometimes of not sleeping, not painfully not sleeping, just unable to sleep. Right. And not knowing that underneath that was anxiety and underneath that was Asperger's. So the diagnosis actually, saved my life, really. It really, really did. It was a gift.
So with the knowledge of knowing maybe what the chemistry makeup is in our body, or, any other people that maybe have gone through some trauma or something like that, what has that enabled you to do? How do you manage your Asperger's now?
I'm really blessed, to be honest, that I did another test around my Asperger's about 3 years ago. After I started doing a lot more spiritual work and a lot more heart-centered work and a lot of heart coherence work, I did another test, and it shows you on a chart where you spike around certain areas like social, relationships, so on and so forth, problem solving. And I'm really high on the autistic side, but then I've got these little spikes that go into the neurotypical side, the non-autistic side. And so that explains why I was able to sort of navigate mainstream world and not really get not really get discovered as an undercover Asperger's operative. But my gifts that I get because of the autistic makeup of my brain have actually been amazing. So I can break down complex things. Anything systemized, I can learn it. If you give me a systemized thing and show me something that sequentially makes sense step by step, I'll be able to learn it. The flip side is if something doesn't make any sense, I can have a meltdown, no matter how simple. So all I did was I went and learned about social dynamics. Once I understood what the gift was and what the challenge was, right, I just needed to understand the systems of social interaction. Now, is there an art to it? Yes, but that's where the heart-centered work comes in, connecting with people, having genuine relationships with people. All it means is that I can't have inauthentic relationships, but when the relationships are authentic, I'm good to go now. Whereas before, I couldn't really do that at all.
It sounds like a condition that we should all have.
I wouldn't wish it on everybody because the makeup of what your balance of gifts and challenges will differ from person to person. I've been really blessed that, the ones that I ended up with, I was the person, also the doctor who discovered and let me know about my Asperger's, Dr. Helen McEwen, who I will love for the rest of my life, also did a lot of work with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So she was able to really hold my hand and walk me through coming to terms with what it is, understanding what my gifts were, and give me some strategies on how to integrate those gifts with living a fuller life.
And so now how do you take all of that you've learned and help other people?
Well, I think without Beyond Intention. So Beyond Intention started to become a part of my life a few years before the Asperger's diagnosis. So I was on the journey of creating Beyond Intention at that time. I don't know if I would have been able to communicate Beyond Intention to the world the way that I do without the diagnosis and understanding myself. And I think the principal thing that comes up from that is, if we don't know ourselves, how can we be in a position to help others? And it's not just knowing ourselves, it's if my cup is not full, how can I give to others? I'm sure a lot of the people listening are in some kind of business or some kind of entrepreneurship, but unless they're taking care of themselves and looking after themselves and feeding themselves and nourishing themselves, doing the things that fill them up, they're not going to be resourced to help others. So I think just the experience of going through this journey where I quite literally, there was this whole section of my life that I didn't know, watching that get filled in, and then seeing how I was able to then be able to connect with people, let alone be able to serve them following that.
Good. And so you have a podcast, right?
Yes.
And what kind of guests do you have on your podcast?
Have inspirational people on the podcast. We've also recently started a business series that shows on a Monday. I've had a couple of my mentors on there. But generally speaking, it's three things I want to do. Number one, remove the stories that people can't live an abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life. Number two, give people examples that they can follow. And then give them some strategies that they can follow too. So generally speaking, my guests are either going to inspire, they're going to give some information, or they're going to give some tools. They're going to give something practical that someone can use to actually make a difference in their life.
And how about you? Do you have any particular tools or strategies that you like to use for yourself, and did you recommend to other people?
Yeah, more than the strategy that I like to recommend, because actually what I invite people to do is take a look at the fact that strategy is going to be more effective when it aligns with you personally, So for example, I meditate daily, right? That's been a practice of mine for many years. Meditation isn't for everybody. I said, oh my God, what do you mean meditation is not for everybody? It's not for everybody, right? But there are other things that people can do to get to the same result of entering into brainwaves that are associated with the meditative state, a clear mind that comes from a meditative state, peace of mind and peace of heart that comes from a meditative state. For some people, that's going for a walk.
Yeah.
My wife loves to hike in the hills behind us. I hate hiking. Like, but she's in her zone when she's hiking, right? A good friend of mine loves to dance, obsessed with dancing. Now I like a dance, but for her, she's like, she's in the zone and she just drops in and gets into her groove. So what I actually invite people to do is to understand themselves. And from a position of understanding themselves, look for something that, number one, is going to empower them to have more dominion over their emotional state. Number two, clear their mind so that they can have a bit more deliberate, be a bit more deliberate in what thoughts are running through their mind. And number three, take care of their physical body, because that's the shell that's moving through time and space and affecting the choices and stuff that's going to create their life anyway. So I've got a box of emotional, energetic tools, and depending on how I feel on the day, I'll dip into that. I've got a box of tools for my mind, whether it's visualization, different types of self-hypnosis and so on and so forth, self-talk, mental disruption patterns. And then I've got physical things I do. I do my yoga. I like to work out. Even things like when I'm playing instruments, I'm really getting into a zone and it helps me to embody what I want to do. But all of these things work for me. People should find out what works for them, but tackle those three areas, certainly.
I love that. I love that. So as somebody that is helping other people, what exactly is your ideal client? Like, who comes to see you to move the needle from where they are to where they want to go?
Generally speaking, Rock, it's really interesting. I've ended up helping people that thought they knew what they were doing.
Okay.
Particularly in the realm of like consciousness and mindfulness and like spiritual practice. They thought, oh, I've been meditating every day for all this time. And, I've had this guru and blah, blah, blah. And the needle moving that I do for them is just opening their eyes to see that maybe there's a bit more of a different approach to integration. And that for me is the work that I do with alignment. And we use Beyond Intention as the model to make the choices, to make that shift. But ultimately what we're doing is we're looking at them as a whole being. Often people that are in some kind of mindfulness, consciousness, or spiritual practice lose sight of the fact that we're not just an etheric, energetic body running through the skies, or, I was in the field in my meditation, I saw the divine, and yeah, that's great. But your bills. What's happening with the bills?
So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that. And this podcast is called Rock Your Money, Rock Your Life. And there is a school of thought that there are some people that are focused on other things. I'm going to be a good parent. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to, be this spiritual enlightened being. And then the money part is like, well, I'm not that into that. That's kind of like for other people. And I think, we all have responsibility to take care of the health of our body. You can't say, oh, I'm busy working. I didn't have time to take care of my body. It doesn't work that way, in my opinion, right?
I agree.
But by the same token, we need to take responsibility for our financial well-being. So how has that shown up for people you work with? Because you kind of intimated toward that there are some people that are like, oh, you know what? That's just not my jam.
Yeah. One of the funniest stories that I've got from people that work with me, I had a woman that did my Ideal Life Blueprint. This is like 2-3 years ago, when it was more of the principal thing that I used to teach. And it was a 12-week program that I used to do. And generally speaking, what happens, we get to week 9 or 10, and that's when the click happens. Something clicks in about 9 or 10. I don't know why it's around that time, but that's generally when it clicks in. And she got it. She actually said, she was walking along and she said, I literally heard the underlying gremlin voice that had been underpinning all of the challenges in her life. And it was this little voice that was saying, you've got to be a good little girl. You've got to be a good little girl. You've got to look good. And we unpacked it and we saw she'd been making unconscious choices against the backdrop of this narrative that she has to be a good little girl. All of a sudden, things started to switch. When she started making choices now from an awareness of that place, things started to switch. And then a week and a half later, she says, Dan, I'm not going to finish the program. I said, what? She goes, well, I feel like everything's done now. She started quoting stories of Yoga Nanda and some other yogis. And she said, well, these people didn't have to actually do anything else with their life. God provided everything for them. So God's going to provide everything for me. Now, I think when people have this, and the reason why I'm quoting this one, Rock, is because I think a lot of people who make this choice not to take care of certain parts of their life say whether it's the universe, God, source, my angels, my guides are going to take care of that for me,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But one thing that I think we lose sight of is people like the yogis generally have spent years in the mountains developing a relationship to something outside of themselves that facilitates that. They don't wake up generally. You get the odd story from history of, oh, this child was born enlightened and
Right.
the angels and everyone sung for them. They went through things in life. They went through certain schools. They went through certain training in order to develop that relationship.